What's going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 150 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we are going to be talking about UFC 293. It's Israel Adesanya taking on Sean Strickland in Australia. Not the best card I've ever seen for a pay-per-view, gotta say. They really are asking you to pay $80 for this. It's I don't usually complain about that, but it's fugly. And I don't think it's the best card for betting. Before we get into it, though, I mean, obviously, if you love the show, drop a like and subscribe. Real quick, this is our 150th episode, and I did say we might do a little giveaway here. So I have an idea, and Lags can tell me if he disagrees, agrees, whatever. But my idea is anybody who shares the podcast from YouTube and shares it onto their Twitter, tags me and Lags and shouts out the podcast, I will enter you guys into a raffle that we'll draw live next week. And somebody from that group will win $150 that I will send them. So we'll do it on the show. So what you got to do, share it from YouTube here to your Twitter, tag Lags and I at MMA Fox, at Danny_Lags, shout out the podcast. And next week, you'll be eligible for a chance to win $150 on me. So that is to celebrate our 150th episode, and to figure we'll give some money back to the people since the year hasn't been the best. So, yeah. So good luck. Hopefully you guys all participate. It'll be fun. We'll have a little pageantry on the show next week. But
I like it. I like the idea.
You like it? All right. There we go. So there's your $150 Grand Prix that you can get involved in here. Before we get into this week's episode, we'll talk about last week briefly. I think it was a good event for both of us. So I had 3.2 units on Ciryl Gane at minus 160. Obviously, it was a very good bet. Kind of how I thought the fight had a pretty good chance to go to if he was able to stop the takedowns. I didn't go like a full max on it because, I thought there was a chance he could get taken down. And if that happened, things could get pretty fucking dicey. So, but happy to cash it. Had 2 units, Thiago Moises. That didn't work out. Honestly, like my biggest concern was the fight was just like the physicality and tenacity of St. Denis just being too much for Moises. And that turned out to be the case. To be honest, he quit a bit faster than I was anticipating. It's unfortunate because I think there's things Moises could have done differently, but it seemed like once he realized BSD was a lot stronger than him, he just kind of didn't really want to be there anymore. Had 3 units on Volkan Ozdemir minus 150. Obviously, I think that that was pretty straightforward. I actually wish I'd sized up there because I felt like my read on Bogdan not being UFC level was pretty much accurate. I mean, the guy just the guy fought nobody. He knocked out a bunch of old people and bums, and that was it. So happy to cash that. And then I had 2 units on Taylor Lapilus minus 150. I don't really feel strongly about it one way or another. He obviously won the fight, but at the same time, margins were kind of thin for him on the feet. Loughran obviously attempted a lot of takedowns there. It actually made me somewhat more bullish on Loughran going forward than I had been. I really thought if Loughran had to attempt 10, 12 takedowns, he was going to gas bad, just given his frame. But he didn't seem to really be slowing at all late in that fight. He obviously has a lot of these to clean up with his striking, in particular his defense. But, if he can attempt takedowns at that clip, he's clearly got a future in the UFC. So I'm pretty interested in backing Loughran going forward. Lags, how was your night? So, plus 3.5 units for me overall. Yeah, how was your night, Lags?
So just 3 plays for me. It was a plus 0.37 units on the night. So I guess we'll start with the losing bet. So I had a unit on Gamori at plus 210. More or less, competed, but more or less, it was outclassed, more or less.
Yeah.
I had a unit on Manon at minus 185. Thought that was fine, even with the handbrake with Rose. I thought Manon was outclassing her more or less again in that fight. And then I had the under 1.5 rounds at minus 120 in the Volkan fight for a unit.
Which is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not much more to add there.
Profitable week last week. So with that, we'll jump into this week. First fight of the night, Kevin Doucette. He's taken on Kiefer Crosby. Both of these guys debuting in the UFC. Current line, Doucette minus 155. Comeback on Crosby plus 135. Doucette, I believe, is a city kickboxing guy. Crosby, he's been around, been in Bellator. I think he's been in Cage Warriors, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have strong feelings on this fight. Honestly, I see a lot of love on Doucette. And on the one hand, I think I kind of get it. The guy, I think he's got better hardware than Crosby has. a bit more well-rounded. On the other hand, I do think Crosby has tools to give him problems, both on the feet and in the grappling. You know, Crosby comes out and he pushes a really, really ferocious pace. I don't think either guy has great defense standing. So, like, I think Crosby can land here, though I also think Doucette can land. And I think Crosby could have grappling upside. The problem for me and why I just can't get there on Crosby, even though he does check some boxes I like he has fought, like, significantly better competition than Doucette has. And I think stylistically there are some things he could take advantage of. I just feel like he has no durability. Like, the guy seems like he gets hurt every single fight. And Doucette, to me, seems pretty tough. I think he's got more reliable cardio. And I think for the way Crosby likes to fight, which is that really intense, pressure-heavy, volume-heavy style with very little defense, he just doesn't have the durability to fight in that manner. You know, it's a good style to back, you know, if the guy can take the fire coming back at him. But I just don't think Crosby can. And so, you know, while I think there are places he could exploit Doucette in this fight, I ultimately think he gets hurt and or finished at a pretty high clip here. So I ultimately think the line's probably about right. What do you think, Lags?
Yeah, we were talking about this pretty much right before we came live, and I was telling you that I think there's probably a little bit of meat on the bone. I think, if any, on the Doucette side, because on the feet, I think it's pretty competitive. Like you mentioned, both guys don't have a ton of defense. I think there's power on both sides, but Doucette has the grappling upside, better cardio too, better hardware. So yeah, I lean more so on the Doucette side. Just two green fighters in general. So I'm fine passing.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, Shane Young, Gabriel Miranda. Line on Young, currently minus 170. Comeback on Miranda, plus 145. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
I think Miranda's a gilly merchant, and that's pretty much it, really. I mean, the guy's early finisher bust in pretty much most matchups. The guy's not fighting any good competition. Has a little bit of wrestling upside, can crack a little on the feet, but cardio is not trustworthy at all, and IQ in general, not very trustworthy. Young, just pretty solid meat and potatoes guy. If he can just kind of shuck off the takedowns, probably keep it standing, I think that's more than enough. I'm not looking to lay this chalk on Young. Line's more or less probably fine. Yeah.
So I had laid the chalk on Young early in the week at like minus 160, but I actually cashed out of it about an hour or two ago. And honestly, like, I would buy back in on Young if the line came down to like minus 125, minus 130. And I do still think he's the side. I mean, to me, like, I agree with you. Gabriel Miranda, like, you look at the guys he's beaten nobody. He's really just a can crusher. But at the same time, you know, he will go for it. He'll bite the mouthpiece. He has no defense at all, and he is gassy. And I do see some quitterish vibes from him. And Young, I mean, he's clearly the technically superior fighter. He's obviously fought way better guys. My problem with Young, and the reason I cashed out, is it's just like, I feel like this is a trap I've fallen into, you know, a lot, you know, throughout this year, where it's like I've laid juice on guys that don't have a grappling path, aren't big finishers. And it's like, if you're not going to have those two things at juice, well, are they very, very high output? Like, are they reliable to win minutes, like, consistently? And with Young, the answer is sometimes. Like, the guy pretty much is willing to let you have the fight you want to fight. He could always, and yeah, like Pepe said, you could just live bet Young. And that's kind of like what I'm thinking as well. Because I mean, Miranda's going to be at his most dangerous early. And like, my problem with Young is it's like, you don't see this guy really ever step on it. Like, you know, take the last fight with Bilder. He lost the fight, bad look. And it was a competitive scrap. The thing is, all he had to do at any point in that fight was just kind of up the output, push the pace a bit. 2 fights ago, Omar Morales, like, loses a competitive scrap with Morales, but he just never really let his hands go. And so that kind of guy against a guy like Miranda, who's going to be very aggressive and, you know, will try to push the pace, it kind of scares me, just because I could see Young just kind of settling into his normal rhythm of like jab, leg kick, kind of reset, jab, leg kick, and just lose a fight on optics. I do think the chances of Miranda finishing Young aren't really that high, which is why I do think he's the side. And I do kind of think there's a bit of value with him, but it's just one of those things where I'd like to kind of see the dynamic play out a bit before I put my money in there on him, especially because, yeah, I mean, Miranda, I think he's pretty reliable if he comes out hot to slow down in this fight. But, you know, we've seen Young put himself in danger early in fights. So, yeah, pass for me pre. I agree with Pepe in the comments. I think live entry is really good here. But, yeah, I mean, I lean the Young side. I think he should win.
Yeah, but I think you're mitigating most of that risk in that first round. Pass.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's like, again, I feel like these are spots that's like I've had a down year, and a lot of them have been spots like this where it's like, yeah, the thinking I think is fairly logical as to why I like Young, but it's not. It's very hard for me to see an outcome where it's like, oh, we're like Young was minus 500, like steal of the year. You know, it's.
I mean, I mentioned to you earlier that this feels similar to the Ozdemir fight of last week, except last week at least you have Ozdemir who has big power, who has cardio edge, who has this and that. Like, there's
a top 10 guy.
Right. You know? There's no like discernible trait here for Young where it's like, oh, he's high volume, big power, wrestling upside. Like there's not much to be had.
Yeah, he's like a borderline UFC guy. He's probably lower tier UFC, which is solid, and it's probably better than Gabriel Miranda, but it's also like I'm not buying low on like a really good fighter, you know, against the bum, like with Ozdemir. So yeah.
And to Sean's point with him being employed in the UFC, it might just be because they're back in Australia now. I mean, you could easily see, like, I could easily see him losing his fight. Maybe it's a close, if it ends up going 15, let's just say he loses a close decision, he gets cut. Like, I don't think he's getting him staying around.
No, I don't think so.
Finished or not, I don't, whether he gets finished or not, I should say, but yeah.
But anyway, we're moving on. We've spent too much time on Shane Young. We got Blood Diamond, Mike Mathia, taking on Charlie Radke, another CKB guy here, taking on a debutant from CFFC. Radke minus 310, comeback on Blood Diamond plus 260. And I'll be honest, Legs, I really, really like wanted to play Blood Diamond.
Blood Diamond. Yeah, I was waiting for it. I was waiting for you to say that here.
Fuck, man. I the thing is, if his striking was even like 60% as good as it gets hyped up to be by the people who talk about him, I would be like all in here on Blood Diamond. The thing is, I'm not even sure he's that good a striker. Like, he's flashy. He's very flashy. I guess he's somewhat dangerous, but I don't think he's particularly technical. I don't think he has any defense. I don't think his game is optimized for MMA whatsoever. And like Radke, I don't think Radke's that good. He's a former 55er. I know he's a jiu-jitsu guy, allegedly, but he doesn't shoot that much. I'm not sure he's a better wrestler than Orion Kossis. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Blood Diamond can keep this standing for stretches. The thing is, if Radke does wrestle aggressively and gets 2 takedowns, like, Diamond's not getting up. Like that's the situation we're in, where it's like, if takedowns come easy, he's plus 800, and it's like, what am I doing here?
Right.
At least if you gave me like a master of distance control who, you know, with great footwork, I could at least talk myself into it. But like Radke could probably just do what Jeremiah Wills did and just sprint at him and tie him up. So yeah, I mean, it's a pass for me. I do not understand betting Charlie Radke at this juice, but you can't fucking back Blood Diamond. Never Blood Diamond. Hashtag. What are your thoughts, Legs?
I feel like you were going to come out here saying looking for a Blood Diamond side, because I mean, for me personally, I take the Radke side first, and I'm like I understand decently big favorite because of the wrestling path, but man, minus 300 is just getting out there. But to your point with the Blood Diamond striking, I feel like if anything, it's just more of like a folklore. If anything, like like big power, okay, sure, but hands super low, not super busy. He's pretty gassy. So I understand the under love here. I understand Radke sub love. I think he probably ties him up.
I can't remember his name, and maybe someone in the comments can. There's this dude who fights in like the Cage Warriors San Diego cards. I think he's a southpaw, but like all he does is chuck like crescent kicks and like stupid spinning kicks and stuff. And like I feel like that's Blood Diamond. It's like if you just avoid flashy kick, he's got like really nothing else for you, you know? So yeah, it should be Radke here.
And again, to Sean's point from the earlier fight, I don't know how Blood Diamond is employed. It's more or less because we're in Australia, I feel like, too, you know?
Yeah, and I think they're giving him Charlie Radke because they want to give him, like, Justin Barry. That's the one. He is exactly like Justin Barry, except he's probably a worse grappler than Justin Barry is. But, you know, yeah, I feel like they're giving him Radke because they want him to get a win, but, like, they're like, reaching deep in the barrel here. They're like, okay, we're going to give you a chance here. If you cannot beat Charlie Radke, like, that's it. You know,
they could give him an easier fight though, like a way easier fight, and a way like
could they
a way better fight, like a strike, like a guy who's largely going to come out and strike with him.
Yeah, that's true. But we move on. We got interesting, well, not very interesting fight here. We got Nasrat Haqparast taking on Landon Quinones. Haqparast minus 470, comeback on Quinones plus 370. Anything interesting to say here, Legs?
I mean, just I would just say off the top, like minus 500 Nasrat is just wild just because the guy's not super duper high pace, not a massive finisher, and he's not going to ever grapple. So, like, you could never really look to lay that. But yeah, I mean, I think he should be fine here. Quinones leaves a lot of holes defensively on the feet. I think Nasrat should be fine as long as he stays decently busy.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a decent price on KO because Nasrat's been such a decision merchant. And like, I feel like the market's kind of forgotten. He has knocked down a bunch of guys and he has like sneaky power, but it's plus 125. Like I can't get involved there. On the Quinones side, I do sort of feel like he's not great, but I think he's probably better than like people give him credit for. It's like, okay, he got subbed by Jason Knight and everyone's like, oh my God, how do you get subbed by Jason Knight? It's like, well, Jason Knight fucking beat Dan Hooker. Like Jason, I know he's a shell of what he used to be, but like Jason Knight has a bunch of UFC wins. It's not like he's some absolute like garbage man, you know? So I think Quinones is okay. I saw someone in one of our chats was like, if you give Landy Quinones like 10 more fights, he has a chance to get to where Nasrat is now. And I was like, I feel like that's a great way to describe it. Like he's got some pieces, but I don't think he's much good. And Nasrat, the truth is he's probably a bit better than he's looked lately. The truth is he was never as good as he was hyped up to be, but he's a solid mid-tier striker. He's never going to make a run like some people thought early in his career, but you know, high volume, decent power. He's a southpaw. Yeah. Shouldn't have any issues here. I can't play him though. And honestly, like, even though I do think he's going to KO him, I sort of plus 125, like how much meat on the bone are you really getting there? Happy to pass it, but I think Nasrat cruises here. Moving on. Cool fight here. Jamie Malarkey, he's taking on John the Bull Mcdessie. Malarkey minus 260, comeback on Mcdessie plus 220. I'll be honest, I gave like a decent amount of thought to taking first when I first saw the line, it was like minus 180, and I was like, fuck, Malarkey's gonna like kill John Mcdessie. And then I taped it and I was like, I really want to bet John Mcdessie here. But so like Malarkey, we know what he is. He's a meat and potatoes guy. He's big, very big for the division. He's gonna come at you, he's gonna throw a lot of strikes, he's gonna attempt takedowns, and he has almost no defense at all. And that kind of guy, I feel like at Mcdessie's peak, you know, was ideal for Mcdessie. He could just pump the jab in his face, mix in kicks, stay on the outside, stuff the takedowns, and just kind of like just move around, use his footwork for 15 minutes and easily outpoint him. Thing is, we're not at Mcdessie's peak. We're far from it. You know, I bet him a couple years ago against Bahamundes, and even that in retrospect, like, I don't know. Like, yeah, he won that fight, but margins were thin. And especially given what we know about Bahamundes now, I'm not even sure how much of that was like great performance by Mcdessie. Then it was just like, you know, one final swan song for John Mcdessie against a guy who really is just not that good. And here I feel like I think Mcdessie could hurt Malarkey in this fight. I think he can land a lot, but the dude just has nothing margins. You know, the guy consistently outlands his opponents, but consistently loses rounds while outlanding his opponents. Like, those aren't great signs because he doesn't really follow up the jab with anything powerful behind it. He throws really pitter-patter inside leg kicks that don't really affect his opponents, and that's it. And he seems kind of content to lose decisions. Whereas Malarkey's going to go for it. And additionally, it's like Mcdessie had major surgery like a year ago. He's 38. He's been through a lot of fights. I just feel like there's so many red flags on the Mcdessie side. Like, I could only bet him because he is clearly the better striker, but giving away 9 years in age with pretty clearly declining durability, and never even having the most of margins, even at his peak, I think the price is probably a little wide, but I think you have to make Malarkey a moderate favorite here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, more or less agree with you as well. Like, I not so much with the betting the Mcdessie side, but more or less with the Malarkey moderate fave, just because, I mean, what you touched on with Mcdessie, I mean, he's a guy who doesn't have a high ceiling ever. Not a big power puncher. The volume's pretty competitive, but he's never going to blow guys out on volume, and never grapples. So yeah, I think Malarkey should be fine. Much bigger hitter.
Agreed. Moving on. Interesting fight you have here. We got Jack Jenkins. He's coming off robbing my boy and my wallet, Jamal Emmers. That might have been like my low. It was not my low point in terms of number of losses for the year, but like mentally, I was just like, fuck, what the fuck is going on? Like when that fight happened. Taking on Chepe Mariscal. Also another low point, not betting Chepe against Peak after wanting to fade Trevor Peak forever and ultimately just deciding this was not the time. But we got Jenkins minus 200, comeback on Mariscal plus 170. What are your thoughts here?
So on one hand, it's weird for me, literally talking about the Peak fight. I bet Peak, fading Chepe, talking poorly about him, he's hittable, gas tank, this and that. So it's tough for me to go into this fight and thinking, all right, because I do think it's fairly competitive-ish, because I don't think Jack is likely going to have wrestling success. But at the same time, when it stays standing, I feel like Jack calf kicks are going to be huge. I just don't love Chepe standing. Personally, I just feel like getting a lot of love from the Peak fight. So, yeah, I think Jack should be all right. But I don't see a huge wrestling path. So, like, laying the juice on him, I don't really get it. So it's an easy pass.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn because, like, there's a part of me that, like, wants to play Chepe. But at the same time, I taped it pretty deep yesterday. And, like, the thing is, I feel like Chepe's striking looked a lot better than it actually is against Peak,
right?
Because Peak is just really bad.
Peak. Yeah.
Like Peak is just so open defensively. Like it was just so easy for him. Like I look at it here, and it's like, Jenkins robbed Emmers, but like Jenkins at least competed standing, and Emmers is he's a very good striker. So and a lot longer. So just given that dynamic alone, I think Jenkins should be fine standing. And as you mentioned, obviously, there's the calf kick factor. At the same time, though, what we saw of Jenkins on his back against Emmers was fucking way sketchier than I would have ever imagined. Like the dude just did not look like he had a clue when he was on bottom. Just wanted to tie up guard and not move. And so I kind of feel like if Chepe gets the top position, like he could potentially have like significant success. And that combined with Chepe's got a big experience edge. He's fought way better guys in the aggregate than Jenkins has. But at the same time, I feel like Chepe, again, like one of those things with the Peak fight, it's like his control didn't look that great to me against Peak. And I think Peak is an absolutely terrible grappler. So I know Jenkins looked bad on bottom, but given, how loose and aggressive Chepe was with Peak, he's probably going to do the same thing here if he gets the top position. So I don't really trust him to do that. And I also just kind of think those throws he was hitting against Peak are probably not going to be there against Jenkins. Jenkins looked pretty aware in the clinch with Emmers, and Emmers is just far better in the clinch than Chepe is. So, yeah, minus 200 feels about right, but I'm kind of with you. The bottom hole alone for Jenkins is enough that, like, you can't lay this price. Like, that's crazy to me. So,
yeah, I feel like if anything, and not saying it's great, but I would rather have the over than Jenkins money line.
What is the over?
It's about the same. It's like minus 200. GTD, I think, is minus 160, something like that.
Chepe's gotten himself finished enough that I don't really want to fuck around with that. Moving on, though. I do have a bet here. It's my first of two bets that I have made. We got Carlos Olberg taking on Zhang. I have a small bet on Zhang plus 240. And quite candidly, I understand why people are hyped up about Olberg. He's obviously a very talented striker and a very talented fighter. Good athlete, really strong offensive striker. Obviously, great kicking game, ton of power, pretty fast. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of flaws in Olberg's game that the market's like kind of, I guess, just forgotten about because of how dominant he's been lately. Like you go back and watch that Kennedy fight, and I know he almost killed Kennedy and then gassed out, but the defense and lack of head movement scared the shit out of me. So I was like asking myself, I'm like, well, is that a thing? Or was it just because he's gassed, he forgot how to play defense? Like that's not normally a thing. So, but I'll take a look. And then you go watch the Charant fight. Charant throws like 20 strikes in the entire fight, but two of those strikes are him just winging wild overhands and Olberg not moving his head at all and getting rocked twice in that fight, which is pretty concerning. And then so I tried to look at his other fights. Dude, anybody that can get inside on this guy, he's there to be hit. And you look at, I know he's on a run, but you look at the guys he's beaten, and they're literally like the worst fighters in the division. Like Ihor Porteria, probably the worst active fighter in the UFC right now, or at least the 205. Nikolai Negumereanu, terrible. Fabio Charant out of the UFC. Taffa Nchukwi out of the UFC. Like people forget, there were a lot of people betting Negumereanu at Pick'em against Olberg. Not me. I bet Olberg in that fight. That was a gift. But like that was a thing that was happening where people betting Negumereanu in that fight. And now he's fighting Zhang. And to me, this is a huge step up. Like you look back and like Zhang, there was a lot of hype behind Zhang. This guy closed minus 110 with Dustin Jacoby like a year ago. Gets knocked out in that fight, but that fight was pretty competitive before the knockout. Then he loses to Devin Clark, and everybody's like, oh, that's a that's a terrible loss. You know, he lost to Devin Clark, but it's like, man, Devin Clark only loses to like really good fighters. The guy's a good wrestler who pushes a crazy pace, and most of that fight was grappling. So it's not a great look for Zhang, but it's not something that tells me much in the context of this fight. And so I look at this fight, I feel Zhang is a bit more tested in MMA. I think the fact that there is some size parity here, like he's the first guy Olberg's fought since Kennedy who is taller than him with a longer reach than he is, might allow him to take advantage of the fact that Olberg doesn't move his head. Like guys like Negumereanu and Patera, they had no chance to get close to him. It was just like a cakewalk for him to easily manage distance, step off, and easily handle them. Zhang, I actually think, might be able to find his way into the pocket here. And if he does, I mean, I think Olberg can land on Zhang, don't get me wrong, and land heavy on Zhang. I think Olberg is the better striker here, and I think Zhang's got a lot of defensive issues. But I think Zhang can land himself, and Zhang hits pretty hard. So, like, I kind of think it could turn into a firefight. I think there could potentially be a little bit of grappling upside on the Zhang side, though I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to know what Olberg's grappling is like. But, like, those factors alone, like the step up, the market reaction to Zhang, the fact that these guys probably will exchange a lot, just makes me feel like the line can't possibly be right here. I do favor Olberg. I think he's the more talented striker. He's the faster striker. He's more dangerous. But, man, this guy's there to be hit, and Zhang throws pretty hard. So I have a small bet on Zhang, just a unit, plus 240. What are your thoughts?
So we're going to be on opposite sides here. Obviously, don't have a bet on Olberg at this crazy juice, but I mean, yeah, I do think Olberg probably knocks him out. I don't think Zhang's defense is great. I feel like on the feet, he throws a lot of winging hooks. He's very open to be hit. I don't like his cardio either. Not that obviously Olberg is going to out cardio him, but I more or less think Olberg just knocks him out. Way more open on the feet.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. It could happen. I'm not saying I favor Zhang. I definitely don't favor Zhang. I just think it's kind of going to be a 205-pound fight, and he's fighting a guy who's a lot better than the guys he's been fighting, you know? So,
and to your point on the grappling success, I feel like if anything, it's just predicated like outside of round one. Like he's probably going to have a tough round one, and then round two, round three, if anything, there's going to be some grappling equity. But
yeah, fair enough. We'll see what happens. I'm not like super passionate on it, but small shot on Zhang for me. Moving on, interesting fight. And there seems to be, I feel like this is potentially like the MMA Twitter main event of the week, and potentially the mush of the week. Yeah, we got Tyson Pedro. He's taking on the pleasure man, Anton Turkalj. Pedro currently minus 114. Come back on Turkalj minus 106. Legs, are you joining everybody and betting Anton Turkalj here?
I'm not, and I'm not going to sit here and say like I have some passionate take on the Pedro side, but I feel like this is more or less, I'm not going to say he's like in the group of guys that Pedro was fighting before, but I feel like this is more or less like a Bukakis, more or less. Like I don't think anything much of Turkalj. His striking is he's super hittable on the feet. Okay grappler, but I don't think his wrestling is that great personally. I think Pedro can handle him on the feet. I think he could probably handle him in the grappling. I think the only thing that's just a massive concern with any Pedro fight is the cardio. So it's tough to ever back him because you never really see a 15-minute performance from him, but I lean on the Pedro side.
Good little comment here from Jared Curry. You can't be the pleasure man if you're not good at taking it on the chin. Max betting Anton. I'm with you. Honestly, I'm not betting Pedro. I think there's a bit too many red flags in Pedro's background and history to really get behind him here. Like you said, pretty concerning cardio for Pedro. Obviously, had a number too. Yeah, and had a number of injuries in his career. But with that said, I do kind of think everybody betting Turkalj are kind of underestimating Pedro too at the same time. Like he's a much more talented fighter than Turkalj is. And while they're fresh, I am not at all convinced Turkalj easily outgrapples him. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Pedro gets on top of him and kicks his ass early in this fight. And on the feet, obviously it's not even competitive. You know, Pedro just much better hands, much better kicks. And the truth is Pedro's fought much better competition in the aggregate. Like Turkalj fought Petrino, and I guess that was like a grindy, weird fight, but that's just because he was wrestling. Like I don't even think Turkalj is that good of a wrestler, to be honest. Like, I shouldn't say that. He's a good wrestler. I don't think he is that good of a control grappler. So like early in this fight, I think he's going to go through absolute fire against Pedro in the first round here. I do agree with the general consensus being if Pedro can't finish him in the first round, he's probably going to collapse down the stretch. Like maybe his cardio is better this fight and he shows up and looks fine. But I think you have to basically make the baseline assumption here that he's very likely to slow down at some point in this fight and Turkalj is probably going to take over. But still, it's like I can't bet a guy who's taking a big step up in competition, fighting a much more talented fighter who's fought much better competition, who could very conceivably finish him early. You know, everybody keeps talking about Turkalj clearly got a great chin. Dude, you don't get at 205, like you may have a great chin. If you take that many shots on it, you're going to go out sooner or later. You know, you're not going to, like, this guy's not just going to walk through everything forever. So, yeah, I don't think there is a side, but I think Pedro has a real shot to compromise him early and or finish early in this fight. And yeah, like Tristan said, I think going with like late Turkalj props is a lot better than money line in my opinion, because I really, really think the first round is going to be very, very rough for Anton here, but we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Moving on, fucking stupid fight that they're remaking here. I don't even want to talk about
on the main.
You got to on the main card. Justin Taffa versus Austin Lane. $80. Remember that. We're paying for this rematch. I literally never complain about paying for the fucking pay-per-views, but Justin Taffa and Austin fucking Lane. Are you kidding? I'm sorry for cursing so much, but like, give me a break, man. Like, what is this? Anyway, I guess we're going to talk about this fight. Justin Taffa's -200, Austin Lane's +170. I think I said this the first time. I think Taffa should really just finish Lane in this fight. He's obviously the better striker. He's got far better hands. Lane, very, very easy to hit on the feet. What I will say is, I mean, you saw this with his brother, Junior, when he fought Muhammad Usman, nothing off his back. Does Justin have nothing off his back? Well, his regional tape strongly implies he has nothing off his back. We haven't seen him grounded since then, though, since he was on the regionals. Has he improved? Maybe, but given what we saw from his brother, I'm inclined to think not. And so there is some equity for Lane to get on top of him early in this fight. And if Lane gets on top of him, he could really mess him up and finish, which is why you can't lay the Taffa price. I just don't think Lane is very good. And I think Taffa's athletic enough to probably keep this standing. I think if anything, I'd look to live play Lane here, but Taffa's so much faster and hits so much harder. I think you got to lean that side. I think he knocks Lane out early. What are your thoughts, Legs?
Not much more to add. And that's actually what I was looking at to see. Funny enough, just a little tidbit. We were talking about, paying for this fight, this $80. And I was looking back throughout all the way back to UFC 287. What was the worst main card fight that we had to pay for?
The worst main card. Tell me.
The worst main card fight from now until UFC 287 was probably Bo Nickel, Val Woodburn.
That was exciting, at least.
I know. Like, that was the worst fight, you would say.
And now we have Justin Taffa and Austin Lane. And Anton Turkalj and Tyson Pedro.
Yes. But no, I don't think there's a ton to add. I think Lane's super hittable. I think Taffa knocks him out early.
Brick Squad said, you don't remember 2020 John's Taffa takes. I am still very, very anti Justin Taffa. The thing is, I just feel like we haven't really gotten a good opportunity to fade him. Thank God I didn't fade him with Porter, because I faded his brother with Porter 2 weeks ago, and that went horribly. If and when he gets a real wrestler, I'll fade him again, because I still believe that he's hopeless on bottom in all likelihood. I just don't think Austin Lane's a real wrestler. Like, I think it's going to be really hard for him to take Taffa down. So,
John,
yeah,
add to that pay-per-view, the fights we were talking about, what was the worst on the main card? I mean, you could go all the way back to his brother, Justin Taffa, Parker Porter, UFC 284.
This is just Justin Taffa.
Or not his brother. Sorry, Justin.
But that's fun. Parker Porter's fun, at least.
Right.
Like Austin Lane, who fucking cares, man? At least Porter's like a cult hero,
Right.
Yeah, people like Parker Porter. Yeah, exactly. Moving on. This is a cool fight, though. We got Manel Kape taking on Felipe Dos Santos. Kape obviously chalked up here. He's -385. The comeback on Dos Santos, +320. Yeah, I mean, our former co-host, he told me that Felipe Dos Santos is the lock of the week and to max bet him. He has max bet Dos Santos, I believe. I don't really agree. I do see the logic for the Dos Santos takes. Obviously, the man's aggressive, comes forward. throws in decent volume, comes from shoot box, which maybe is the most important thing for a case for Dos Santos, since it seems like all of these. I'll tell you what,
it's the juice factory.
Yeah, they something is in the water there. Something. The only one who hasn't looked like he was on turbo juice was Bedoya, and even Bedoya ate like 6 kill shots and didn't go out.
I think they just opened I think they opened a new smoothie bar.
That's got to be it.
Yeah,
that's got to be it. Good protein, great protein they have there.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so I think that is a reasonable case. Like Kape's issue historically has been just not doing enough. He can be not busy. And 2 years ago, I probably would have played Dos Santos here. I'll say this. I think that's changed a bit over the last year or so. Like you go back and you watch the Zalgas fight, and Zalgas came for Kape in a way you'd like to see. You think Dos Santos would, and Kape did not. He was not low volume in that fight. Like he's a counterpuncher. If you bring it to him, he's going to let his hands go, and that's kind of the thing for me. Is like. I think Kape's got his flaws as a fighter, but I just don't. If Dos Santos tries to bring a firefight out of Kape's defense is just too good. His hardware is too good. He's too fast. He's just too much better than Dos Santos. So I do think Kape should handle Dos Santos here. I think he likely finishes him, but like Brickscott said, it's hard to cap the shoot box magic, but it is worth considering. Yes. What do you think, Legs?
The only thing I really want to add here is that I do feel like Kape has some wrestling success if he goes to it. Obviously, we don't see that a ton, but he's Dos Santos super aggressive. I feel like Kape can easily just time well-shot takedowns, control him. And not to mention, this is also on short notice for Dos Santos too. So,
yeah, I mean, Kape is very good. Let's be honest. Like I've had my issues with Kape, but he's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal striker. So yeah,
his margins just can be iffy, but this is not.
But like I said, his margins. It's funny because for guys that go aggressive on him, his margins don't end up being iffy. It's when guys kind of give him that low tempo fight, he's kind of happy to take pictures and just kind of try to pick his shots. And I don't think there's any danger of that happening with Dos Santos. So yeah, I think Kape knocks him out. Honestly. Moving on, I do have a bet here. We got Alexander Volkov taking on Tai Tuivasa. I bet Volkov minus 200 to win 1.5 units here. It's just really difficult for me to see Tuivasa having any kind of consistent success minute to minute. Could Tuivasa knock Volkov out? Yeah, of course. I mean, he obviously hits hard. That's obviously his most viable path to victory in this fight is knocking Volkov out. The thing is, I just don't think Volkov, first of all, I don't think Volkov's an easy guy to knock out in general. The guy's been KO'd twice in his career. Once was by Derek Lewis, where he just got sloppy late in that fight and got knocked out. And then the other was way back in the day, regionally. Volkov measures distance very, very well. He's got a 5-inch height advantage. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. That's enormous at heavyweight. He throws a lot more strikes per minute. He's got way better cardio. He's the way more durable of the two fighters. While Tuivasa has fast hands, I don't think he covers distance very well. I think he's a bit of a plotter when he comes forward. It's in contrast to say when he fought. I think I mentioned this to you, but I kind of view it almost like the Walt Harris fight in a way, except Walt Harris.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, he has his issues. He's gassy. He can be a bit fragile. But Walt Harris is an explosive athlete who covers distance very fast. I was much more worried about Harris just exploding him with a left hand than I am about Tuivasa, because I just don't think it's going to be easy for Tuivasa to get inside. And even if he gets inside, Volkov's just so much better in the clinch than he is. And then, you added a layer further. It's if Volkov really wants to grapple him, he could fairly easily just take him down and own him here. He's literally more skilled at everything. Even power-wise, I don't think Volkov hits much less. Well, he hits less hard than Tuivasa, but he's much more durable, and Tuivasa is pretty fragile himself. And taking it a step further, it's look at Volkov's losses. He lost to Tom Aspinall. He lost, Cyril Gane won a clear decision, but it wasn't a non-compete. He was only outlanded by 20 strikes over the course of that fight. And he lost to Curtis Blades, as opposed to Tuivasa, who it's dude, this guy fought Gane too. And yeah, he knocked him down once. Tuivasa got outlanded by 80 strikes in 2.5 rounds. There's just a huge gap in their skill ability here. Even Tuivasa's wins, it's he beat a totally washed Derek Lewis in a fight where, by the way, Derek Lewis, of all people, won a unanimous first round against him. he beat Sakai, who's not very good, and Sakai, who can't play at distance, has to play in the clinch. So kind of played right into his hands. Beat Greg Hardy in a fight where insta-wobbled and then clipped Greg Hardy going for the kill. Beat Stefan Struve, old, doesn't fight anymore, retirement fight. Beat Harry Hunsucker, not in the UFC anymore. Like, you just go back, and like Tuivasa just doesn't have a lot of very good wins outside of Lewis, and that was like the worst form of Lewis, as opposed to Volkov, who's only losing to the top guys in the sport. I just think it's going to be really hard for Tuivasa to get inside here. He's got worse cardio. He's the worst striker. He's got worse wins. He's got worse losses. Yeah, I think Volkov should win however he wants. Obviously, he could get knocked out, but I can't put knockout at a high clip at all. Like, I think Volkov minus 300 here makes a lot of sense. What do you think, Lags?
So first thing, I'll piggyback on the Derek Lewis fight. Derek Lewis took him down in the first round, of all people. So, I mean, Volkov, the better kicker here, better striker here, more durable, like you touched on with the power. I feel like it's honestly probably equal with Tai's defense. I think Volkov should cruise here. I think he probably finishes him as well, hoping for a decent, like, doesn't start round 3 to some type of violent spot, because I just don't love playing the under 1.5s. But yeah.
Yeah, and laying juice on a heavy is always kind of a bit of a dicey proposition. Right. I just, like, I look at it, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like Volkov is like one tier below, like, championship level, and Tai is just not there. It's like Tai's knocked out a bunch of bums, and Derek Lewis is corpse. You know, like that's to me.
The speed for me is the only thing that's like holding me back a little bit. Like, obviously, Tai's going to be faster early, and in general, Volkov's not like a super fast guy. It's more or less his volume, the kicks from the outside. So
I just can't even imagine Tai having that much success kicking. You know, like, he can land leg kicks, but he throws a lot. I feel like he's going to get countered hard on them. And Volkov, dude, that guy's legs are like tree trunks. Like, I really don't think he's going to be hurting Volkov with leg kicks in this fight. And like, you even go to extended fights that Tai's had. It's like Blagojevanov won a decision against him, outstruck him fairly easily. I don't think Tai's made many improvements personally, and he did this camp back at Sydney. So,
and he looks just
horrible.
I'll be honest. He looks like he's just coming off the beach, like ready to party. Yeah,
I think Volkov should be completely fine here. If he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out. But I'm happy holding a Volkov ticket. But yeah. Moving on, got a main event nobody asked for. We all wanted the African War of Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya, but instead we get Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya. And at this podcast, we're fans of both of these guys. And the line on Adesanya is a minus 650 here. A comeback on Sean Strickland is plus 475. Is it wide? Probably. I mean, it's probably a little wide. Like 87% implied in a striking fight seems wide. But at the same time, I just struggle to see in a big cage how Strickland really enforces the kind of pace that he needs to. I can't see Strickland having wrestling success even if he goes to it. Like, as with every Adesanya fight, people are trying to hype up the Strickland wrestling angle. But I mean, Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori couldn't dominate this guy wrestling. You're telling me Sean Strickland's going to? I don't really think so. It's likely going to be a volume striking fight where I think Adesanya is just going to do a bit more and land a bit more. Does that equal minus 600? Probably not. I think the line's probably wide, but I don't really feel like donating. I do like one angle here, and I do like the goes the distance at plus 110, primarily just because I've heard a lot of like 4-5 decision any type angles or bet Adesanya 3-4-5. Thing is, Israel's not really like an attritional guy. Like, look at his career. Most of his KOs are off like one instant moment on the counter, and obviously that could happen here. But I feel like Strickland's very, very durable. Like, Pereira just caught him with a nuke flush on the chin. Other than that, we really haven't seen Strickland hurt in the UFC that much. And I don't think, Pereira was kind of happy to bang down in the pocket with Strickland. I don't think we're going to see Izzy standing in the pocket much. I think it's mostly going to be on the outside, just kicking and jabbing. And so while volume might be high, I kind of think this goes the distance at a pretty high clip here. I don't really, like I said, I don't think Izzy's going to like damage Strickland's legs to the point where he finishes him or do like crazy body work. Plus, you might see Strickland clinch him up again a bunch and try to push him against the cage. So, yeah, I think goes the distance should be closer to like minus 150 than plus money here. So I'll probably take a poke at that, but I haven't done anything yet. What are your thoughts, Legs?
So, big fan. We are big fans of both these guys, especially Sean Strickland after cashing against Abus Magomedov, the fraud, in the main event. That was great. But yeah, I mean, there's not much more to add here. I feel like this should be a comfortable Izzy decision. I don't really buy a ton of Izzy finishing him, making a statement, this and that. Sean's a pretty tough guy. I get he's there to be hit, but like you mentioned with Izzy, he's not a guy who's just going to step
a smart fighter.
Right. He's going to stay back, pick his shots. Should be fine. But angle I do like if you have DraftKings, Izzy money line and the over 10.5 minutes is minus 165.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a decent same game parlay. Yeah, I agree. Like Izzy's not an idiot fighter. He's not going to go in there and just like, try to pull his dick out and get into a firefight till someone dies. Yeah.
What I will say, last thing I will say about the matchup, well, I guess not the matchup in general, but like if they wanted to have the DDP Adesanya fight, why not do like an interim belt? Like something else in the meantime, maybe just for the hell of it.
Like here on this card?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly think they just
prolong the Izzy fight, but
I think they only made this card because Volk isn't healthy enough to fight Topuria right now, and they really wanted to have either Volk or Izzy fighting in Australia. That's the only thing that really makes sense to me, because otherwise this fight doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. It really doesn't. So I think that's probably why. But yeah, I mean, that'll wrap it up. I wish it was more exciting. I wish we had more bets to talk about, but this just isn't the card for it. Next week's card a bit more fun, and we'll talk about it. Brick Squad wants an early Holland Della take. I'll give you the early take. Evan and myself have a shoey bet on that fight. Evan's got the Jack side. I've got the Holland side. I'll save the breakdown for next week, though. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. As a reminder, we are doing a giveaway here. If you like the show, share it from YouTube onto Twitter, tag Lags and myself, and shout out the show. We will throw all of those names into a hat or some generator next week, and we will pick one of them who will win $150 live on the show. All you got to do, share the show from YouTube onto Twitter, tag Lags and myself. That's it. Guys, as usual,
John,
you can find me on – yes, sir.
Sorry, last thing to add. For your early Holland Madalena take, I think your tweet that you tweeted out about the which side flying out, I think that's probably a decent little tidbit to add here.
Yeah, I did say that. Mike's MMA, great guy, Mike's MMA picks, but he put out a tweet saying he wondered why Della and Holland wasn't on this card. And I said, and I believe this, they don't make the A side fly across the world. People think the UFC is making this fight for Jack. I promise you that is not the case. Who's selling more tickets, Jack Della Maddalena or Big Mouth? The real ones know. And everybody's going to find out next week. But we're going to break it down next week. It's Kevin Holland season, though. Yeah, guys, as usual, you can find me on Twitter, John at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. Hope you guys have a good weekend this weekend. Take it easy this card. This card sucks.
Yep.
So don't go too crazy, but good luck on your bets. And we'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Peace.